over this. You can be fixing your own answers on that same page or on a separate sheet of paper, doesn't matter. For number 1, you had to find this. It's alright. You had to find the slope of the line. So find 2 points, doesn't matter, and count that slope. So this should have been 1/2. For number 2, this was a horizontal line, so you needed to remember your point bucks. Because this is a horizontal line, your slope is 0. Number 3, a lot of you got 3, but you didn't put -3. This is a negative slope. Some of you put -3/1. Simplify as much as possible if it can be simplified. And then I saw some, you just flipped your rise and your run, so you did -1/3, so be careful with that. Right. And then number 4 was a vertical line, so this slope was undefined. Questions on those 4? Yes?
For shortening work, how does that tie into this?
For this part, does not really work for you to show. Just counting correctly.
If it does help, if you have those intersecting lines and you get your segments, you can put the dots there.
Yeah. So I didn't put all the points here, but there's a bunch.
You don't necessarily have to do it, but it will help in case you're confused about how you got the answer.
So each of those were worth 1 point, finding the slope correctly. Number 5 and 6, you had to actually find your slope using your formula. Some of you switched, like maybe not these 2, but maybe these 2, which made your answer negative when it should have been positive, or vice versa. Some of you switched these, which was the wrong thing entirely, so just be careful with that. But here we should have had a 9/-18 or -9/18, depending on how you wrote that, which would have simplified to a -1/2. Some of you got -2, so that was switching your x and y's. 6 was similar. So here you should have gotten a +2 over a +20, which would have simplified to be 1/10. Make sure you simplify as much as possible with these. Questions on those 2? So those were both worth 2 points, 1 for your slope work, 1 for your answer. 7 was just, can you determine out of these 2 numbers which one is your slope? So there was no work for you to do. And 8, you had to solve this, get it back in slope-intercept form by subtracting your x and dividing everything by -3. Some of the things I saw here was you wrote that this was dividing, but then put them next to one another, -3x instead of x/3. Some of you put a negative after you had 2 negatives, which made your slope wrong. Some of you left this like this, but didn't actually tell me what the slope was. So make sure you're actually answering the question. Your slope here would be 1/3. Questions on any of that? So this one was worth 1 point, this one was worth 2, the work and then the answer, making that 11. on the next page. This was probably the lowest of the four. For number 9, you had to find your slope and y-intercept to write it in the slope-intercept format. Your y-intercept here was at -3. Your slope was +4. So your equation should have been y equals 4x minus 3. That was worth 2 points, getting the slope correct and the y-intercept correct. Ten was worth 1 point because they gave you the slope and the y-intercept. You just had to write them in the equation. Y equals -2 over 3x plus 3. With both of these things, I saw a lot of, we're forgetting our x. We have to have both variables and the numbers, our signs, all of that in our equation, so be careful with those things. The last two were probably the most missed. So with these, we need to be using our point slope formula. I think we said something about if you haven't checked the vocab wall, now would be a good time to do it because they are up there. So this was your x1, your y1, your m, so you would be putting each of those in. Y minus -2 equals your slope, and then x minus your x1, which is 5. Distribute on the right, make this a plus. Those of you that did this, some of you didn't put a plus here, which threw the rest of your work off. Or when you multiplied, you didn't get 3, which also threw the rest of your work off. And then, if you are subtracting by 2, your equation would have been y equals -3 over 5x plus 1. Some of you were putting -2 as your y-intercept, but that's your y value, not your y-intercept that's given. Questions on that one before we do this last one? $12 was similar, except you had to find your slope first. -5 minus 3 over 5 minus 3 to give us -8 over 2 to give us -4. To find your slope first, then use either of those points in this format. A lot of you use this one if you did this work. So y minus 3 equals -4 times x minus 3. And then distribute. Similar to the problem above, if you were doing this, some of you forgot to put plus here, which changed your answer. So be careful with that. But your final answer should have been y equals -4x plus 15. So that one was worth 3 points, finding the slope, the work to get to your final answer, and then your final answer. The one above that was 2, your work and your answer. Questions on either of those? The next section, the graphing, was probably the highest scored. Most of you did pretty well on this one. So for 13, you should have had a y-intercept at 3. Fill up your graph as much as possible, but in this case, you could only go one other point. Make sure your slope is going in the right direction. Some of you made it negative, which would have made that wrong. Make sure you have arrows because these lines go on forever and ever. So really these were worth 2 points getting the slope and y-intercept correctly, but not having arrows or not having all your slope points or anything like that started to lose points. So make sure you're filling up your graph, finding the correct slope and y-intercept, doing arrows, all of those things. For 14, your y-intercept was at -1, your slope was negative, so you should have had at least 2 other points, and your line would have looked something like this. I think the most common issue with that one was we flipped the slope. For 15, this should have been a horizontal line, so put a point at this value, 1, and draw a horizontal line through it. Some of you did a vertical line at 1, which was the opposite of what you should have been doing. So just try to keep those separate. Write your Hoybucks if you need it. And then the last one, start at +5. We can't go up, so you have to go down. And to the right 4. So this one would only have 2 points. And you would graph that line. Questions on any of those 4? And then the last section, the intercepts. For 17, you needed to show the work to find both of your intercepts and then write those as ordered pairs. So which one you did first didn't matter. Show that you put 0 in. Some of you started to convert this, put it in slope-intercept form, which would have been fine work to find your y-intercept, but then you still would have had to do the work to find your x-intercept. And then divide everything by -2. Again, be careful with your signs. Some of you weren't bringing down the negative, which made your y-intercept positive instead of negative. And then same thing with your other one. Because this would be 6x equals 24, divide both by 6. I saw some x equals 6 here. I think we were just looking at too many 6's and wrote down the wrong answer. 4, 0, and 0, -12 were the final answers there. This one was worth 4 points, 2 for both sets of work, 2 for both answers. Questions on that one? Um, 18, you had to write the equation. 1 point was you showing me how you found your slope, whether you plotted these 2 points and counted, whether you did the slope formula to actually find your slope, either of those, so that I know that's how you got your slope. And then write the equation. Some of you just drew a line, but that's not what it asked for. It wanted you to write the equation, which would have been y equals 1/5 x minus 1. That was the answer I was looking for. So that was worth 2 points. And then the last 2 were also worth 2 points, finding your x and y intercept and labeling them. So your x-intercept was at 1, 0. These should have been in order pairs. And your y-intercept was at 0, -1 for the first one. The second one was at 5, 0 for your x-intercept and 0.2 for your y-intercept. Question on those? So your test is Thursday. So keep that in mind. Come see either of us with any questions you have on anything. For me, that would be tomorrow morning or after school tomorrow, or Thursday morning before your test. And then, that. So we're going to not start the STAR test before lunch, but I want to get everyone set up. So take out your laptop.